Hello class, this is Mr. Mormon. Welcome to video number 10 in my ecology series. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of biodiversity in ecosystems and how humans can impact that biodiversity. Biodiversity is one of Earth's greatest natural resources. What it means is the variety of species, different species that live in an area. Having lots and lots of different species in an area is an example of high diversity. Rainforests, for example, would be areas of very, very high diversity. And that's a good thing. It makes the ecosystem more stable. The more organisms you have, the more stable the ecosystem is. Because a farm field only has one species growing in it, and there might be some other, just a few other things living on and around it, but it's mainly just one species that the farmer has planted. That would be very low diversity. These diagrams can help explain why high biodiversity leads to a more stable ecosystem. Let's say there's a very simple ecosystem that has this food chain in it. And there's a problem and something happens to this organism. That whole population gets wiped out. What is that going to do to the owl? Obviously, if there's a simple food chain, not a lot of diversity, the owl is going to go extinct as well, and it's going to cause major, major problems. But in this more diverse ecosystem where we see a complex food web, if you take one organism out, it doesn't necessarily mean the end for the owls. There's a lot of other things on the menu. All right, so that's why a higher diversity is going to lead to a more stable ecosystem. Diversity is also very important within a species. Having a high genetic diversity makes them more stable and more resilient. Having a lot of different kinds of DNA in the different individuals makes the whole population a lot tougher. And I'll let Tim explain why. Just remember, in his example, he's talking about a cloned farmer's crop, which would have a very, very low biodiversity. All the plants would be exactly the same.
Also, genetic diversity helps species survive. Let's say a virus comes along that's deadly for some wheat plants. In a normal crop of wheat, that's no big deal. Some of the wheat will die and some won't. Not all wheat is the same. But if all the wheat in a crop is made from a single clone, the farmer better hope that that clone is resistant to the virus. If not,
So the important thing to remember here is that diversity is good. High biodiversity makes an ecosystem more stable, and within a population, genetic diversity will make that species more stable or resilient as well. The problem is humans are doing things that are messing up biodiversity and decreasing biodiversity in many ecosystems. And that's what we're going to talk about in the rest of this video. Some of the human activities that reduce biodiversity would include habitat destruction, overharvesting or overhunting, introducing toxins and other pollutants, and introducing foreign invasive species. It's important to understand that Earth has a finite supply of resources. Some of Earth's resources, such as our food supply and solar energy, are renewable. Given sufficient time, renewable resources can be replaced. Other resources, such as fossil fuels and minerals, are non-renewable resources. Once they're used, they cannot be replaced. Growth of industry, urban development, agriculture, resource acquisition like mining and logging, all of these make a huge impact on ecosystems. In addition to destroying habitats directly, they also will pollute the air, water, and land. Deforestation is a big problem, particularly in the rainforest. Deforestation, of course, is going to lower biodiversity, but also cutting down all those trees and their roots, which hold the soil, leads to soil erosion, further damaging the habitat. Here we see a logging trail cut into the rainforest to give the heavy equipment access to the trees. You can see the obvious destruction to the habitat and how the soil is going to be easily washed away. Overharvesting has also had serious negative impacts on biodiversity around the world. We have fished many of the ocean species to near extinction, and hunting has done just as much damage on land. With responsible fishing and hunting regulations, populations can be maintained, but very often that's not what's happening. Um, there's also a problem with overcollecting of wild plants and mushrooms in some areas of the world. This is a display of passenger pigeons in a museum. Passenger pigeons used to be very common in the United States. During certain seasonal migrations, they would blacken the sky with their huge flocks, and they were hunted like the scene shows here in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were hunted to such an extent there are none left. The passenger pigeon is extinct. Another example of irresponsible hunting practices is the American buffalo, hunted almost to extinction. There are a few still around in the wild, but nowhere near the numbers that they used to be. These are all buffalo skulls you're looking at. Another example of a species way overhunted. Okay, moving on to toxins and pollutants. Acid rain is caused by nitrogen and sulfur pollution from industry and transportation, and these sources we see here. The nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide, they travel up into the atmosphere where they mix with water and form weak acids. They then come out as acid rain, snow, fog, which could be, many hundreds or thousands of miles downwind from where the actual pollution was created. Over time, the acid rain can have a devastating effect on delicate, sensitive ecological areas. It will also have an effect on gravestones, statues, and buildings made from limestone, as you can see in these pictures here. Another problem is biomagnification. Many toxins get concentrated as they move up the food chain. Like we see in this diagram with DDT, there's some DDT pollution in the water. The producers absorb and pick up that DDT, and in the tissues of the producers, there's a much greater percentage of DDT than there was in the water. Now the zooplankton, that's the animal-like plankton, is going to be eating these producers, and they're going to eat a lot of them, concentrating the DDT even more. And as you move up the food chain, because each level is eating a lot of the level below it, it gets concentrated more and more and more. By the time you get to the top of the food chain, the concentration is much, much higher. It gets increased by about 10 times at each trophic level. The eagles at the top here have such a high level of DDT in their blood that it causes major physiological problems. They lay eggs that are way too thin to survive. The shells are way too thin, and they crack when the mother sits on them. Many types of toxins are magnified in this way. Another way we humans damage ecosystems is by introducing foreign or invasive species. When a species is moved from one ecosystem to another, in its new habitat, there might not be the proper predators to keep their population in balance, and they can quickly become overpopulated and cause major havoc in the new ecosystem. These are gypsy moths. They were accidentally introduced to the United States from Asia. They've become a big problem in New York State. In some years, there are so many of them, you can see the kind of damage that they do to trees. These trees have been hit particularly hard. Now remember, this is a summertime scene. There's no leaves left on most of these trees. Gypsy moths have a very big appetite. Another huge issue is global warming. This is caused mostly by increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from burning fossil fuels. Gasoline and diesel burned in cars, trucks, trains. Coal, natural gas, and oil being burned to create electricity in power plants. All this puts carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. You can remember from an earlier video that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. This increases the greenhouse effect, and it's making things warmer. This graph shows the steadily increasing carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere from all this burning fossil fuels. Global warming is a problem for several reasons. It's changing weather patterns. It's having an effect on ecosystems around the world where the climate is now not suitable for certain organisms in the habitats that they're used to. This global warming is also leading to a great deal of melting of ice. The polar ice caps are melting. All the ice on Greenland and at the tops of all the mountains, the glaciers, they're all melting. This adds water to the oceans and is leading to sea level rise. Switching to using more green energy, more renewable sources that are not using fossil fuels is going to help this. More solar, more wind, more geothermal, more hydroelectric power, and less fossil fuels is definitely something that we have to do in the future. The last problem I want to talk about is ozone depletion. Ozone is O3. It's found high in the atmosphere, and it plays an important role in protecting us from extra ultraviolet radiation. It acts as a bit of a shield, protecting us from those harmful rays of the sun, which cause sunburn, skin cancer, blindness, etc. So we really don't want to lose that ozone layer. The problem is some of the products that we use now and have used in the past go into the atmosphere and they destroy ozone. The worst culprit are CFCs. Those are chlorofluorocarbon. CFCs are found as propellants in spray cans and also in refrigerants that you find in an air conditioner or a refrigerator. Chlorofluorocarbons have been banned in the United States, and many other countries are beginning to do the same. This graph shows what the ban has done to help the problem and get us off of the bad trajectory that we were on. This problem is actually getting better. There's still a hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica, but the evidence seems to show that it is starting to rebuild itself. Okay, that's about it for today. I just want to suggest that you go back and study these notes on ozone depletion, acid rain, and global warming. These are three ideas that students mix up all the time. They are three different problems with three different causes and three different effects. You need to know the difference. I want to conclude with this one final chart that we've seen before. Human population is now over 7 billion people on this planet. And there's no signs of any slowing down in this part of the graph. All of the problems that I mentioned in this video are made worse the more people there are. So as population increases, every single one of the ecological issues is getting worse and worse. Controlling this unsustainable growth will be very important in the future to keep all the people and all the other organisms on this planet happy. All right, that's it for today. As always, if you have any questions, please ask me tomorrow.